Infrastructure as code can be a complicated beast to learn, and so can Terraform. Knowing what comes first and where to start can result in getting a big headache and just giving up. So if you're struggling to learn Terraform and struggling to understand where to begin and what to get started with, then let me give you a few tips in this video. Hey everyone, Mike here, aka the Cloud Coach. Before we get started with the content, let's get that subscribe button smashed and let's get that bell pressed. And don't forget to check out our Discord community over at thecloud.coach/community. It's free to join, and if you've got any questions about today's video, then come along and ask. And I've got some bonus tips as well at the end of the video, so make sure you're sticking around until the end to get those little bit of extra tips that will help you with your infrastructure as code and your Terraform studies. So you've heard of infrastructure as code and you've heard of Terraform and you want to get started. Terraform seems like the perfect tool for the job, and I can promise you it is. But before we get started with the actual project ideas that I have for you and methods of learning Terraform, let's just go over just a little bit of theory first for those of you that aren't quite sure specifically what infrastructure as code or Terraform is. Infrastructure as code is about representing as much of your physical or virtual infrastructure as possible as literal code. This allows us to do many things, but the most important of those is we're able to test that code and we're able to review that code before we allow the code to go live and actually manipulate our infrastructure. So an incredibly powerful concept. It also means that we get an audit log as well, because code obviously is going into a Git repository. Our CI stack is going to execute it for us. So we get this really nice audit log, which we can actually then run through if some code introduces a problem. And the code also acts as documentation as well. So if anyone wants to know how your infrastructure has been configured, how it's been set up, what it looks like, the code is great at helping people to visualize exactly the finer details as to how your infrastructure has been set up. Terraform comes into the infrastructure as code picture because it is hands down the best tool in the market at this point in time. Terraform lets us write HCL2, which is HashiCorp Configuration Language 2, that allows us to build our infrastructure both simple and complex. And once written, we can execute it, we can get a plan, it'll tell us what it's going to do before it does it, and then we can actually make that plan go live, and what we end up with is exactly what we've written in the code, and that is an incredibly powerful concept too. But that's enough theory, right? Because you want to learn how to study Terraform. I find that WordPress is a great project to work with and a great project to get started with when it comes to learning any new kind of technology where you're standing up infrastructure or you're configuring networks. The thing with WordPress is that it's popular, it's simple, it's very well known, it's very well documented, and it's a great way to learn how to implement Terraform because it's also in demand too. So if you're writing code in Terraform and in Ansible that's allowing you to stand up WordPress, then you're actually putting yourself in a position where you're developing skills that are actually quite valuable. So let's go over some ideas as to how you can implement WordPress using Terraform. The first idea that I propose is that you use Terraform with DigitalOcean to build out a very simple WordPress solution. Just start with a simple droplet for the time being, just one single droplet at this point in time, and build that droplet using Terraform. Create the droplet, delete it, recreate it again, and just get a feel for how Terraform operates. Just get used to the simple command line tool for the time being. Then after that, what you want to do is you want to implement a second droplet and the load balancer as well. So you want to clone the first one in the code, you want to create a copy of that droplet, and then you want to put a load balancer between the droplets so that you've got traffic being moved between the two. Do that in Terraform and you'll move your architecture, your very simple WordPress architecture, up to the next level. Then add maybe a little bit of extra complexity by looking at maybe installing a TLS certificate on the load balancer, for example. That's something that DigitalOcean can actually do for you, but don't forget you'll need a domain name in order to get that done. And then of course, once you've got this infrastructure stood up, don't forget you're going to need to log into those servers and you're going to need to install WordPress manually, or if you want to look at something like Ansible, that's a good option too. But what you could probably get away with is just manually installing WordPress on both of those servers, because this is Terraform, right? It's actually operating at the infrastructure level, not the operating system level. But if you get to the point where you can build infrastructure that you can install WordPress on, get it load balanced, via that load balancer and protected with transport layer security managed for you by DigitalOcean, then what you're going to find is that you're actually building out a real world solution to a real world problem, and you don't really have to worry about automating away WordPress at this point. This is all about that infrastructure, and we're starting simple. We're starting with 1 droplet, then 2 droplets, then a load balancer, and we're doing all of that in Terraform. Once you've got WordPress set up and installed on DigitalOcean, you're going to have quite a simple architecture. What I propose you do next is take it to the next level, is then move that architecture over into Amazon Web Services. DigitalOcean is designed for developers. It's designed to be simple, and as a result, any kind of architecture that you build in DigitalOcean will be, yes, it will be simple, but it's not the kind of service that you find being used in enterprises. This means you're not really going to be building out complex installations or complex infrastructures that you're going to find in the real world. You're not really going to find these things in the enterprises. So DigitalOcean does have its limits, and so the next thing I propose you do is shift over into AWS. Once you've made the jump into AWS, you have your account ready, you're sort of just doing the same thing really. You're going to start with 1 EC2 instance, then 2 EC2 instances, then you're going to get that load balancer in place, then you're going to get that TLS certificate in place. But AWS is a bit more complicated. You've got VPCs to deal with, you've got subnets to deal with, and I recommend that you get rid of the default VPC and the default subnets and the default routing table, and you actually build those out yourself. And that's going to give you a very good holistic overview of the very core principles around AWS and Terraform, and you're going to build this really simple infrastructure in the grand scheme of things, but still much more complicated than what DigitalOcean is going to let you do, and that's going to further your Terraform knowledge. It'll also introduce you to services like ACM, Amazon Certificate Manager, and Route 53, its DNS management service too, and you'll notice that your Terraform, once you've made the jump over into AWS, will actually start to get more complicated. It'll start to feel a little bit more beefy, a little bit chunkier. You'll start having more code, more files, and you'll start to feel that you're really starting to learn intricate details about Terraform as you keep writing more and more code. But at the same time, you're also learning about AWS as well. The second idea I have for you will elevate your knowledge with Terraform to another level again, and that idea is quite simply using the AWS reference architectures. These reference architectures have been designed to suit the needs of very large enterprises, and so they're big and they're complex, and that's ideal for learning. But don't be afraid of big and complex, and don't be afraid of the word enterprise. Just get stuck in. You've already built a basic WordPress installation in DigitalOcean, and then you've transitioned that over into Amazon Web Services. The reference architectures, yes, are big and more complicated, but you have all the fundamentals that you need at this point to actually get started. So look, just go for it. Most of this idea would actually be more about studying AWS than it would actually be studying Terraform, but that's a good thing because AWS is in demand, and being able to understand how to use AWS's services and build those services with Terraform is going to further elevate your usefulness and also your profitability within the marketplace too. And if we come back to our old friend WordPress, you'll be pleased to know that there's actually a reference architecture for that too. Go and check out the AWS reference architecture, specifically the WordPress one, because that is at least 1 to 2 months worth of studying right there. It's very complicated, it's very in-depth. You're going to have a lot of questions, you're going to have to read a lot of documentation, and don't forget you can check out the Discord server if you do have any questions. We're always here to help if we can. But the reference architectures are big, complex, and enterprise grade, which means there is plenty to get your teeth stuck into, which means it's going to very greatly accelerate your Terraform learning, because you're going to have this big, complex architecture for which to focus on and just get implemented. My third and final tip is actually replacing WordPress with your favorite open source software stack. Have a pop at getting it up in DigitalOcean, and then again moving it over into Amazon Web Services. And then once you've done that, I want you to take it to the next level and not just do this for yourself, but actually teach other people how to build that infrastructure for that specific open source software. This is actually a great way of learning something yourself, and that's teaching other people how to do it. That really helps to lock in your understanding of what you've been learning so far. And you can even take it a step further by sharing your knowledge as documentation for that open source community. You can share how to stand up that open source software in Amazon Web Services or DigitalOcean using Terraform, and you can contribute that back to the open source marketplace. A lot of people are going to find that extremely useful. They're going to be very grateful. It's going to make it easy for them to adopt that technology, which could go on to do all kinds of things for people. It could go on to save them a lot of money, a lot of hassle, a lot of stress. So it's a great thing to do for the open source community. And it's a great thing for you too, because you'll get to learn more along the way. All right, so I promised you that there would be a few tips at the end of the video, so let's jump straight over to those. Tip number 1 is just write code. Just do it. Get started. Open your IDE, VS Code, Atom, whatever it is, and just start writing code. And then you want to break that code. You want to optimize that code. You want to expand on that code. But you're not going to learn anything if you just don't do it. Tip number 2 is don't be afraid of failure. Don't be afraid of breaking something and failing, because that's how you learn. You learn by breaking stuff and then fixing it again. That's how it works in the IT industry. And when things are virtual, it doesn't really matter if you break it. You're not hurting anyone. You're not losing any money. There's nothing wrong with standing up something that is broken, fixing it, and then when you're done, you'll learn how to overcome those hurdles, and then you just blow it all away again. It's a great way to learn. So don't be afraid of failure. Failure is what makes you stronger. And tip number 3 is teaching other people what you know. Blog about it. Create a YouTube channel. Create some YouTube videos. Maybe go onto a Discord server and share what you've learned. But by teaching other people what you know, you're showing that you've truly understood the knowledge. You've truly taken on board that knowledge. So if you can teach someone else what you know, then you've mastered it. I really hope that you've enjoyed this video and you've managed to get as much value out of it as possible. Let me know in the comments below how you got started with your Terraform journey. Was there something that you did differently from what I've discussed today? And of course, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and obviously subscribe for future content too. I've been Mike, the Cloud Coach. You've been great, and I'll see you next time.